great for that too, but not the kind of digitization Google does. It's different kinds of product. So I think one of the things we all need to do if we're going to discuss this is try to get much more clarity about the range, the nature, the variety, and the pace of digital products around the world. And one of the big problems in our discussion is that it's very difficult to attain that level of clarity. It's difficult to get guidance. It's difficult to find your way through the labyrinth. And this seems to me to be what libraries and libraries really need to be doing for us over the next 20 to 40 years, is giving us this kind of guidance, both to the for-pay resources they assemble, but also to the vast array of not-for-pay resources, which they also know about, can assess, can help us learn, help us guide our students to. So that's my general take. It is one in which, yeah, I live and work in a very digital environment. I've spent the last 4 years mostly sitting in the British Library, reconstructing an archive, a single scholar's collection of the books he annotated. And these have never been digitized, and they probably never will be. They're pathetic, ugly little books that are scrawled all over. But at the same time, I constantly had recourse to hundreds of digital resources while sitting there using them, and that's transformed my experience. And I think that's where most of us live, in some combination of material and digital resources. I don't think we've gotten very good at training people to do that yet, or even creating training and guidance. Just a few things that worry me. The big thing that worries me is libraries, and they worry me not because of librarians, but because of a fourth group of stakeholders, and that's to say university trustees and regents, who operate with vastly less knowledge either of the kind of practices we engage in or the nature of the information field. I speak with some feeling because the lead trustee of Princeton is a gentleman called Eric Schmidt. When the provost went to trustees to propose to spend $200 million reconfiguring and restoring our library, Mr. Schmidt was not favorably impressed by the idea. Tail wagging the dog here is the comment that he supposedly made in the trustees' meeting. So I do think there's huge pressure coming from university governors to cut libraries to the bone, to de-skill their staffs when they actually need more skills. They need the old skills they've already had, plus a vast range of digital skills. And what I hear coming from university governance circles is the library is something we can basically staff with a minimal group until books are entirely obsolete. We don't need people with PhDs, because why would you need PhDs when we use search now? We don't need the kind of help that people with doctorates give us. We don't need books, so we can clear out this valuable central real estate on campus and use it for things like high-end classrooms, even as the faculty say, no, please don't give us high-end classrooms. We don't want high-end classrooms. As long as I can show PowerPoint and get access, please don't give me high-end classrooms. We want to make the library into a social space, which is more and more of the language that you hear on campus. And we don't really see any value in it except as big space right in the middle of campus, which we can colonize for all kinds of current uses. So that's one thing that really worries me. The other thing that really worries me is what history and history departments are doing to train ourselves and others to meet the kind of challenges that Jim has talked about, to live in the world that I suspect Abby's going to describe much more expertly than I can. Apart from the Virginia duo of Virginia and George Mason, which I think will be eating the lunch of the other humanities universities in America in about 10 years when everybody catches on, there's really very little going on by way of realization of the implications of this revolution. Let me just suggest a couple of them. First, training has to be simultaneously traditional and digital. It's like the world history revolution. You don't just have to master the sources and archives and historical tradition in one society. You've got to do more than one society while still having that original mastery. It's exactly parallel, only it affects everybody, even people who aren't going to have global concerns. Secondly, digital work is collaborative work, and history does not have a structure of rewards for collaborative work in the way that the sciences have developed one over the last couple of generations. If you want to get your students into digital work, you have to teach them to work with one another and with professionals in other fields in a way that historians haven't traditionally done. But more important, we have to find ways of convincing history departments and administrations who don't think of humanists in these terms of promoting and rewarding collaboration. work. So these are two sets of big worries. I don't actually see much coming by way of a solution in most of the academy, though I think there are a couple of exceptions, like the George Mason Center for Digital History, which really do offer models that the rest of us should be looking at very hard. What I'd like to think is that we'll all be like Ioannis Tritemius. Tritemius, magician, forger, Benedictine abbot, many other things, wrote a book in 1492 in praise of scribes. It's really like the legendary boy who yelled, "Get a horse," when he saw his first Model T. And magnificent books. If these printed books, they're cheap, they're ugly, they're full of mistakes, they're never going to last. But what a scribe does, that's going to last forever. Sounds rather dim, except of course he wrote the book for print with his regular publisher, with whom he published many books, and he worked with his publisher to use a Roman rather than a Gothic typeface so that the books would be marketable across the Alps in Italy, where they didn't like reading Gothic type, as well as in the German world. So I think we all have to be like Tritemius. We all have to fight for our books and say, no, we have to keep our books, but we have to be sneakily part of the new world that's coming in, as well as rhetorically defending the old one. Trouble is, Tritemius was really smart. I'm not sure that we'll be able to do it.